All right, and now we're going to kick it off with our ChannelCon keynote speaker. We keep the introduction brief so we can have plenty of time for a great presentation. I want you to please welcome globally recognized futurist, award-winning author of Kill the Company, End of the Status Quo, Start an Innovation Revolution, and CEO of FutureThink, Lisa Bodell.
Is everybody properly caffeinated? Yeah? I am Lisa Bodell. I'm the CEO of FutureThink, which is a company I founded about 20 years ago. And we are located in New York. I have a team of incredible people, about 17 of them around the world, from Singapore to Frankfurt to Buenos Aires, London, and around the United States. And our job, the people that I have on staff, is to help people better identify, anticipate, and activate change. So we talk a lot about reaching our potential through change. And the people on my staff are very diverse because we work with executives and senior leaders like yourselves to help them better grow their businesses. And the people on my staff are futurists like myself, which I'll tell you about in a minute. They're entrepreneurs, they're inventors, they're cognitive psychologists, they're people that are trained in improv. Many of my people have trained at Second City, and they are a riot. And what's very interesting about them is they know that in order for us to learn something new, we have to do something new. So I thought today that I would go through about 300 PowerPoint slides. Does that work for you guys? Yeah? If you're clapping, you better leave the room, okay? Here's what I want us to do. Let's interact a little bit and get the energy up in the room. So do me a favor. Can I have everybody stand up for me? Push in your chairs if you can. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to raise the hand that you write with. Okay, very good. I heard you guys were smart, so we're off to a good start. All right, this is also the hand, from a psychology perspective, most of you high five with. High five 5 people not at your table right now. Let's get the energy going a little bit. I'm going to do it too. Good morning. I'm going to. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, there's some inappropriate slapping in the back, so we need to stop now. All right, now what's really interesting about this is everything that we do at FutureThink is we do it with a purpose. And what you just did when you stand up is you're doing something called kinesthetic learning. So many people, when they learn, you are visual learners. Many people now are visual learners with video. You are oral or oral learners. But you are also a very small percentage of the population, that is me as well, are kinesthetic learners. You have to move to think. Many children that are diagnosed properly or improperly as having ADD are kinesthetic learners. They cannot sit. They have to be moving to be able to comprehend things. If you are sitting at your desk too long, which you do every day, you sit on your butt the majority of the day, you are denying yourself activating your neocortex and being a kinesthetic learner. Now, there's a science to this, and this is something you can do with your teams. There's been some research out of many places, but most recently with Stanford, that said if you get a group of people to solve a specified problem, you split that group in half. You put group A into one conference room and group B into another. Both of those groups, A and B, will come up with great ideas, right? But there is one group that will do a better job of coming up with ideas, even excellent ideas. And that is the group that did something different at the start of the meeting. They stood up, they did some kind of icebreaker, they didn't think about the problem before they dove in to solving it. Make sense? So next time you have a brainstorm, spend a little time doing something that has nothing to do with the problem, and you'll get better solutions. Anyway, let's sit down and let's get started. Now, I started this conversation here saying I wanted to do some things today. I want to really do 2 things. The first thing I want to do is I want to inspire you. I really want you to think about you are able to be innovative. I believe everyone can be innovative, they just need to know how. I'm going to inspire you and give you tools that are very simple that you can take back to your office and start making the change that you want. The second thing that I want to do is that I want to make you uncomfortable. The way that we actually challenge the status quo is by questioning our assumptions. Our assumptions are what hold us back from actually coming up with new ideas. So if I say something today that makes you uncomfortable, I want you to ask yourself, why? I am not the expert in your business. I'm not the expert in your industry. I'm just giving you what I know is knowledge. The future is not written in stone. If I say something that makes you uncomfortable, ask yourself, why? Now, a little bit of the content that I'm going to draw from today is from my book, and it's called Kill the Company, which is not about killing your company. It's about getting rid of things that don't work to make space for things that do. And the whole premise on the book came up a few years ago when my trainers were traveling around the world. And we noticed something very interesting happening. And what was happening was the very people that were bringing us in to teach change to their teams were the very ones that were holding us back from doing it. The people that were bringing us in to teach change were the very ones who were holding us back from doing it, and we wondered why. So I did research. I go to about 30 countries a year. I'll speak to about 100,000 people this year if I do it right. And I come across people from all kinds of industries, and I wanted to find out what holds us back. And what was interesting from my research that I did with my team is that we found out the very things that we tend to put in place to help us better innovate and create change. At most companies, those are the very things that hold us back from doing it. Meetings, report, policies, processes, emails. We put these things in place not to help us take a risk, but they often help us prevent it from doing it in the first place. So my position is that we are approaching change all wrong. And sometimes with innovation and coming up with new things, the first thing you have to do is to stop doing things. Get rid of the things that aren't working to create space for things that do. And I'm going to show you some things to do today that'll make that happen. Does that sound okay for you? Does that sound okay? Okay. All right. So we talked a little bit about change and what holds us back. I want to talk a little bit about personally what's going on with people. And this is one of my favorite quotes from Deming, who many of you know. Change is not mandatory, and survival is not required. Right? Why do we hold ourselves back? And I think it's a couple things. The first thing is I think it's context. And this is a quote many of you have heard. Futurists use this all the time. Right? Henry Ford said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have told me a faster horse. The point here is not about faster horse. What we're getting at is context. Right? When he asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horse because that's all they know. Right? Nobody knew what a car was. No one could articulate that there's something on wheels with a chassis powered by gasoline that goes down. It didn't exist. And that's one of the issues we have today. The more disruptive something is, people don't have the context for it, so they don't understand it, even when it might be the right solution. And many of you have experienced this, especially if you're in your 40s, 50s plus in this room, from something that happened to you significantly in the 70s. Right about the late 60s, early 70s was when retail banks were going through a major transformation. And they were talking to people and they were saying to them, what could improve your banking experience? Right? They asked customers like you, what can improve your banking experience? What did people say? Shout out to me. What would somebody have said? More tellers. That's exactly what they said. Nobody said in the research that I've read, no one said that they wanted their money to come out of a wall. No one said it, right? Because it didn't exist, but it was the right solution. So what's interesting about that is the context, you have to be open to something completely disruptive. It holds you back. The next thing I think that holds you back is mindset. Mindset. Now this is a picture of my children up here. Jack, who's 12, and Lindsay, who is 8. They are wonderful. And one of the gifts that I can give them, because I travel so much, I've been to, I guess, in total 50 countries and 48 states. If you are from North Dakota or South Dakota, please see me after. But I take my kids on trips with me because I think it's extremely important to get out and see the world. Innovation is everywhere. You have to get out and experience it. It is particularly important for Americans to do this, right? So I started taking my son a couple years ago. Our first trip was to Spain. I had the opportunity to be in Madrid and Barcelona. He's a huge Real Madrid fan, and we were going to go. So we went. And what was really interesting for me was anytime, I really like to get out and explore, right? The more uncomfortable, the better. You have to be a little careful when you're with your kids, though. But we would wander, and we would go to a cultural event, we would eat something new, we would see something new, we would interact with people speaking different languages. And what was interesting was something started to happen I didn't expect. And my son would pull me down close to him sometimes, and he'd say, when he'd experience something new, he'd say, Mom, that's really weird. And I said, Jack, why is that weird? And he said, because that's not how we do it. And I said, Jack, do you realize that when people see you do something different, they think that you're weird? And he thought about it for a minute, and he looked at me, and he said, no, right? And it's no. Not, anyone that has kids knows this. And I said, Jack, if you're going to travel with Mom, you cannot use the word weird. You have to use the word different. And I'll tell you, the next trip that we took together, his complete mindset changed. Right? Anytime we would experience something that he wasn't familiar with, he'd say, hey, Mom, that's new. Now, that's very important in terms of lexicon. We know this from a cognitive psychology perspective. Weird sets up a construct, a context, right, of right versus wrong, good or bad. Different sets up open to possibilities, and that's very important to get in that mindset. So I want you to think today about being different, not weird. I'll tell you one more quick story. You don't have to travel abroad to actually experience something new, especially in this country, right? 300 million plus people, incredibly diverse. We decided we were also going to start taking our kids to the West. I used to work in advertising, and I worked on Marlboro for years, and I used to go out on shoots with the Cowboys. That is a conversation over cocktails, ladies. See me later, okay? It was a great job. So I got to know the West very well. And we decided last year that we would take our kids we took them to Big Sky, and then we wanted to show them the Rockies, because this is also very important to see your own country. And we ended up going to Colorado, and we went to this slummy little dumpy town, really roughing it. It's called Vail, Colorado. Have you been there? Right? And we went to Vail, and we did a whole bunch of things, from rafting to climbing and hiking, etc. And on the last day, we went to a rodeo. Who here has been to a rodeo before? Oh my God, they are so much fun. I'd never been to one before, and we took the kids, and we sat there, and it was, this was in Beaver Creek, so it's not really roughing it, right? Half the group is drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon, and the other half is drinking Veuve Clicquot, so it's not really roughing it. But there was an announcer, and he got off out at what I'll call the halftime show. And for anyone that's been to a rodeo, there's barrel racing and bronco busting and all this stuff, but the halftime show is usually that thing with kids called mutton busting. Right, where they get out and they wrangle those sheep, and the sheep are really mean. I thought it was incredible. So these 20 kids that they had asked ahead of time to be outside, and their parents had given permission. They're like 5 years old, and they put on those hockey helmets, and they bobble out there. Well, the announcer says at halftime for all the kids to come out into the dirt arena. And he looks at the crowd, and he says, we're going to start with the mutton busting, but I want to introduce you to these kids. This is a great experience for you all. This is the future of America. And everyone just starts clapping, like, oh my God, what's going to happen now? And he looks at the kids, and all the parents are watching from the stands, all excited for this experience for them. And the announcer, who's got like his hat on and big belly and rodeo buckle and tip boots, he looks at these kids and says, how many of you are from the United States of America? And most of them raised their hands. And he said, which ones of you are not from this country? 3 of them raised their hands. So he goes over to the first one, and he gets down, and he says, how you doing, little guy? And he was very intimidated. He looked back up at the announcer, and he said, where are y'all from? And the kid was from Buenos Aires. And he said, well, we're glad to have you here. And then he goes to the second kid in the middle, and he says, where are y'all from? And it was this little girl, and she was from Calgary. And he said, well, you know a lot about rodeos there. We're glad to have you here. And then there's the last kid on the end of the row, and he is just jumping up and down, chomping at the bit. And so the announcer saunters over to him, and he says, how you doing, little man? And the little boy says, sir, I'm good. And he looks at him and says, you're not from this country? And the boy goes, no, sir, I'm not. And he says, well, then where are y'all from? And he looked at him and he said, sir, I'm from Texas. Oh my God, that was the proudest day of his parents' lives, I think. I thought that was unbelievable. All right, so you can see and do something new right here in your own country. The important thing is to get out and experience the world. So let's start seeing how good you are at experiencing things. So I'm going to actually advance the slide here. We're going to play a game. Now this is a futurist game. My background is that I'm a futurist. And what futurists do, it's actually a science degree. You can get a bachelor or master's in science. I have many people that actually were professors of futuring from all over the world on my staff. And what futurists do is we talk about possible, probable, and preferable scenarios for the future. Possible, probable, preferable scenarios for the future. And our goal is to help people anticipate weak signals of change. Weak signals of change. And to do that, you have to keep your antenna up all the time. So just by show of hands, how many people here think that they are good at picking up signals of change? Raise your hands. Okay, mix, maybe less than half. Well, here's what we're going to do. I am going to, in this game called In the News, I'm going to read to you some headlines from the future that may or may not be true. May or may not be true. You have to figure out when I read them whether you think they're true or false. But here's how you're going to tell me. When I read the headline, if you think it's true, you're going to stand up and give me jazz hands like this, okay? If you think it's false, you're going to stay seated with your arms crossed and look very angry, okay? You guys ready? You think you can do it? Let's see how smart you are. All right, I'll read the headline and then I'll tell you when to stand up. Here we go. First headline. Jawbone, Redbox, and Stanford are developing retail experiences driven by your behavior, okay? And a San Francisco pilot, this just launched on August 1st, and I think it is cool. Redbox kiosks will read consumers' profiles, right? They've actually put into their tracker and their Jawbone. It will read their moods and their behaviors when you walk up to a kiosk to get a movie, and based on the information it reads, it will recommend movies to you based on how you are feeling. If you think it's true, stand up and give me jazz hands. Don't do this. That's really lame, you guys. Stand up, okay? All right. Now, people sitting down, I want you to look at these people, right? Because these are visionaries, okay? These are thought leaders, right? These people are wrong. Sit down. Okay? It's not true. You never start with a true, you guys. It's like Keynote 101, all right? It is false. It is false. But why did you stand up? Possible, probable, preferable, probably already being done, right? So if social was the word for the last 10 years, for the next 10 years, for the past 10 years, for the next 10 years, behavioral, right? Cognitive computing, we know this, but we've only seen the beginning of it. And we see silly little things like in consumer applications, and we discard it. But it can become so much more. And I want to show you one even silly experiment that I saw recently, and I saw the video on it, from Dow Egberts. If many of you that travel to Europe quite often, I'm sure you know them and you see them in airports. They did a kiosk experiment in a South African airport earlier this year that was very telling. And they wanted to offer people coffee, not when the customers told them they needed it, but when the coffee company thought they needed it the most. So let me roll this video for you and you can see what you think.
Ladies and gentlemen, passengers, Dublin Transport Express Flight 7617, can't stop United Seat of 1 is the end of the 12.
right? Not when you think you need it, but when they think you need it, right? Based on behavior. This next picture, this is Nigel. This is a BMW, a Mini, in conjunction with USC that is being laid out with 1,000 sensors, right? Sensors clearly is a big thing happening in many different industries, healthcare being one we do a lot of work in, automotive is the next, and BMW is very forward thinking in terms of who their partnerships are with, from universities to cities and beyond. Outfitting this car with 1,000 sensors is to help you be healthier, right? The next frontier around cars is around health. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of my pharmaceutical clients in the future will be major partners of BMW. So when you get into this car, for example, well, the first thing it'll tell you is when you sit down whether you've lost or gained weight, which could be a big problem, by the way. And then it speed dials your therapist right away. Then you can put your hands on the steering wheel, obviously, and we can detect lots of different things, but one of them might be your heart rate. And is your heart rate greater when you pull into the driveway of your home or when you pull into your parking spot at work? It can also detect through air filters in the car if you're going into a more polluted area, and the GPS will reroute you to somewhere that might be eco-friendly and healthier. And it goes on and on and on. But this could be the car helping you change your behavior, and your behavior help change the way that you drive the car. So here's what I want you to think about with this. With technology and wearables that we hear so much about, how will they really, this behavior-driven tech, change your business and how you service your customers? How can you anticipate what's next? Okay, I don't want you to feel bad about yourselves from the last one where you stood up and it was false. So I'm going to give you another chance. Here's the next one. DBS, which is a large bank in Singapore, they are using artificial intelligence. They're using IBM's Watson's Engagement Advisor, IBM Watson, the artificial intelligence that they have, going into new industries, the future of IBM. But how DBS is using this is as a competitive advantage. We all know from many of us that are clients of banks or brokers or funds, many of them, most of them do not outperform the market. What if we could use artificial intelligence layered on to the advice that we get at banks to help us better create a portfolio? So DBS is using Watson's Engagement Advisor that can analyze millions of pieces of structured and unstructured data based on what the market's doing, how stocks are rising and falling, based on my personal income goals to recommend a portfolio that they think will outperform. This is for their high net worth clients, 5 to 10 million assets under management, and they've been doing this since January of this year. If you think it's true, stand up and give me jazz hands. Stand up. Oh, now you guys are getting cocky. I like it. All right, you think it's true. Banks using artificial intelligence to recommend stock picks. You guys are crazy. And it's true. Very nice. All right, now you feel good about yourselves, don't you? Much better, right? It is true. But what's really interesting about this is that's not that far off, right? We already know that IBM Watson, when they've used it with Memorial Sloan Kettering, using structured and unstructured data, doctors can't even get to enough of the data that they have available, that IBM Watson is predicting lung cancer rates more accurately, 90% more accurately than doctors do at 50%. Think about how that can be applied to many different industries. AI hasn't even touched the surface yet. So here's what we need to think about, right? This is so you can be cool at a cocktail party. Many of you already know this. The era of where we were with descriptive insights is beyond, it's just gone, right? What happened, right? This is how much is in your bank account. We've already moved to predictive, but what AI does is it takes us to prescriptive, what should happen. And this is how it looks, like this. Descriptive is your transaction history, right? That's table stakes. If that's all your bank is doing, fire that bank. Then it gets to predictive. This is how much I think you'll spend, based on previous patterns, at McDonald's this week. That's easy. But then it gets into your personal spending goals. If these are your goals, here's how you've got to be able to manage it, and we're going to make sure that you do. So here's what we want to do with big data and AI, right? Because it's all buzzwords right now. So how will AI, right, and intelligent agents transform you and your clients? How can you create products that actually embed this type of technology? And what can you do in terms of offering services with it, especially when we get open APIs to your clients? Okay, I have one more headline. and this is probably the most complex, and this is probably one of the most important. I hope you're ready for this one. Here it is. Huggies in Brazil has launched TweetPea. It is a sensor device that is attached to each diaper, and it alerts parents via their smartphone when their baby's diaper needs changing. TweetPea. I love it. Look at this guy. Stand up. True or false? TweetPea. TweetPea. A lot of the parents are like, I'm not going to stand up, but I really would like that. So, TweetPea, you think? Let's take a look. It's true. Oh, I know. This is the reaction from everybody. You've got to be kidding me, right? Now, what I like even more, here are the pictures, right? This is Huggies TweetPea. Now, I can't read Portuguese, and I know you all are looking at the URL. Yes, it is huggiestweetpea.com. This is my favorite. Here's a couple shots of it. Look at that sensor. It's just sweating. It's like, please, change me. And the alert that goes to your phone. Now, this to me is a great example. Right, the future is very personal, and it's very opinionated. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So here's one of the things I want you to take away here. When you're thinking about social media or apps, whatever you might talk about, how can it be used to solve real problems? See, I think about it in terms of packaging. When I think about nano wraps that'll go around food and will detect us visually and tell us when things are stale, or with syringes that we know change different colors when the needle's been used already one time, and then it can alert us via social media, that can be a smart use. So let's talk a little bit more about identifying change. And this is the last chart you're going to see. What's interesting about change is that how it starts and where it stops is never what you think. How trends start and how they evolve and stop are never what you think. So this is how a futurist would look at a trend. Right, so there's on the left-hand side here of my chart, it's how aware you are of something, and on the bottom is how many hits or Google hits it gets over time. The more hits, the more aware, the more it's evolved. Now here's what's interesting. Trends start as emerging. That's in the bottom corner. Right, there's no name for it. It's the crazy inventor or entrepreneur that's coming up with an idea, the person you think is crazy and wish would get back to work. Then it's framed, there's investors, there's bloggers, there's a name for it, there's acronyms. Then it's mainstream, right? It's public, there's players, there's platforms, there's rules, and then finally it's resolved. There's lobbyists, people go to jail. This is how it's happening to you. And this is how you've experienced it. So back in 2004, all of you that read your Harvard Crimson, I know, you saw a little tiny piece in there, boring but important, that said hundreds of people have now registered for FaceMash, now being called Facebook, and this is a thing. And somebody went into their boss and they said, boss, we better check this out. And the boss said, that's great, get back to work. And then a few years later, right? There's a TechCrunch picks it up, now part of AOL. The bloggers are talking about this. There's a term for it. It's now called social media. There's a player. That player was MySpace. There's an anti. That was Facebook. And now it's a platform. Wow, this is getting big. Money is being spent. And then, right? Front of Time magazine. This is what I would like to say if I talk to a millennial crowd. This is the moment when your mom has friended you on Facebook. The game is over, right? It's over. And then finally, this is what happens, right? The Supreme Court rules, and we realize that this is not about social media. It is not. It is about data, structured and unstructured. And as soon as we can have better cognitive computing and we can upload our thoughts into the cloud, and I'm even meaning like Ray Kurzweil, the singularity is near kind of stuff, when you can actually put those thoughts unstructured into the cloud, how much are they worth? Who gets them when you die? And these are conversations right now that VCs and insurance companies are having. This is about data. So why do you care? Because down at the bottom of this chart, this is where you are influencing change. And at the top, this is where you are taking orders. Where do you want to play? And where do you play? Okay, now what holds you back from playing sooner? What holds you back? Now there's a lot of cognitive psychology, again, that talks to us about how we interact with each other. And when we get together, what are the things that we typically do? Now, what that means is in this room, we are doing typical things according to this study. And it's usually 3 typical things. And I'm wondering which one of them you're doing right now. So right now, 18% of us, when we get together, are focused on what I'm actually saying. Raise your hands. Yeah, that's more than 18%. You guys are lying. I like it, though. 18% of you are focused on me. 25% of you are having an unrelated thought or a sexual fantasy right now. Do not raise your hands. Okay? I don't want to see it. I don't care. All right. 57% of you are doing what's called on-demand thinking, right? In and out thinking. This is the world that we live in. We multitask. We're focused. We're not focused. We hear things when we want. She's talking. She's talking. She's boring. Oh, my God. Sexual fantasy. And I'm boring again, right? So this is how it works. We tune in when we want. So you as a boss, this is what you need to think about. And this is not generational. Cut that crap out. It is not generational. You do it all the time, right? So this is when everybody thinks differently. When we get together, we have lots of things on our mind. You need to create a workforce that can be prepared to solve problems on demand. And you need to be a boss that can lead change with simple things on demand. Now, what's interesting about this is, here's the problem that's happening right now. And here's the reason why it's so hard to do. This comes out of the research again from my book. We are valuing very different things than we even did 10 years ago. The first thing is, I think we spend a lot of time managing versus leading. In fact, the term I like to use is that we are not growing leaders within many companies, we are grooming professional skeptics. It is more often when I go in and I teach people about innovative ideas and taking risks, they can tell me what is wrong with a new idea far more often than they can tell me what's right. And they've got to get out of their system absolutely everything that is wrong with something before they can even tell me what's good about it. Because you're taught to eliminate risk. And that makes it hard to take one. The second thing is this whole idea of process over culture, right? We're much better with structural change than behavioral change. And the word for the next 10 years is what? Behavioral. The third thing is this whole thing of doing over thinking. And in fact, my conjecture is that thinking has become a daring act. When I ask you what you do all day, right, in your job, what you spend most of your time doing, what is it? Shout it out to me. What do you do most of your day? Okay, Facebooking, you should be fired. But anyway, what else? Okay, now what do you do all day? Research? Fighting fires? Most people, when I ask this question, they say 2 things. Meetings and emails. Meetings and emails. But you're supposed to be innovating. How is that? And I tell this story. I sit on a board with some scientists at 3M. Incredible people. I mean, I like to say the geeks are my peeps. They really are. I think scientists are the ones that are creating tomorrow today. They're amazing. Incredibly patented, forward thinking, very humble. And we have this meeting we do every couple years, and we get together, and it's always fun. The kickoff night is always a really fun cocktail hour at their innovation lab. And I was talking to one of the neuroscientists there, and we were talking about some research, and he said, you know, Lisa, what's amazing is that the brain is not only the most important, but the most amazing organ that we have. It starts working from the very moment that you wake up in the morning. And it does not stop until the very second that you set foot into your office. And I thought that was true, right? But we laugh because we know that's what happens, right? So what I get at is, here's some other research that came from the Energy Project, which is a really great company if you don't know them, that talks holistically about what is energy and how do we get it. And I don't mean energy meaning oil and fuel, I mean personal energy. And what they showed was, I know this is hard to read, from a recent survey, this is what people said about what holds them back, right? 70% of people said they don't have regular time for creative or strategic thinking. They don't have the ability to focus on one thing at a time or have an opportunity to do what they enjoy. And the reason for that boils down to a couple things I'm going to talk about. One is complexity, right? All the things with meetings and emails and putting out fires. And the other thing is the result of that, which is complacency. Everything is just fine. We don't want to rock the boat. So until we can actually get rid of things, people aren't going to start to want to do more things. So let's talk about that a little bit. How do we actually get people to change so they stop doing things like not wanting to actually do something new? There are companies that are big, right, that are complex, that actually embrace change. And if they can do it, you can do it. And let me give you some examples of what I mean. So let me talk about Shell. We work a lot with oil companies and energy companies. Here's a company, by their words, that have more money than God. Their words. They do not have to change. There are very large oil reserves. Many of you know this. Oil will be around for a very long time. You will be dead, your grandchildren will be dead, and your great-grandchildren will all be dead before we run out of oil. The competition is alternative fuels. So what they realize is, even though they could rest on their laurels and keep the status quo, they need to change. And they need to go from becoming a company that extracts energy to growing it. What does that mean? The future is all about who you hire. The future is the skills that you hire. So what they have to do is they can't hire people anymore that are geoscientists, they have to hire bioscientists. So guess who their biggest competition is for talent? Pharmaceutical companies. That never would have happened 10 years ago. Or maybe if you're a car company like BMW, you realize that in 20 years, most people will live in cities 30 million or more. There is not enough room for them to own cars. The infrastructure does not exist. If you are a car company, you are peeing in your pants right now, right? People cannot own cars. So what do? You do mobility systems, right? You don't even own the car. You just help people rent it out. You own the systems in the car. Or you work with universities, like this one right here with MIT, and you create mobility pods that actually expand down to the fifth of the size of a parking space, and you can park it like a bike. Mobility systems. And then the final one I love is if you're in publishing, for example. And if you are, I am very sorry. It's a tough gig. But if you're Macmillan, you hire a VC, you give him $100 million, and you say that he can only invest in companies that will put them out of business. And what they mean is get way beyond things like the ebook, get to things like sensory reading. Has anyone here read a sensory book? Sensory books are books that you can read now, but you have a lot of hardware with it. Or in the future, you can feel the book while you read it, right? So if you're reading a book and it's hot outside like it is here, you start to sweat. Or if the character breaks up with his girlfriend, you get a little upset. And there was a great blogger that was talking about this. He said, I don't want anybody in New York that's reading 50 Shades of Grey to be able to read a sensory book. So what are these companies doing? If they don't have to change, but they are, this is what you need to be doing. And it's, it's called proactive obsolescence. Why wouldn't you change before somebody puts the change on you? So how are we going to actually do this proactive obsolescence? Well, first of all, I have to understand, and you have to understand, are you really open to changing? Most of you are not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quiz. So do me a favor, if you have a piece of paper, I want you to number it 1 through 8. And if you don't, you can do this in your mind. It's pretty simple. I'm going to give you 8 statements. And these 8 statements are all around how good you are with change. And all you have to do is tell me whether you answer yes or no to these statements. And if I read the statement, by the way, and your answer is maybe, that's a no. Okay, no cheating. All right, here we go. I'm going to read them off quickly. Statement number 1. People in my organization, or if you're in a huge company, your little division or group that you manage, they actively think about how to push boundaries of what is possible, and they imagine how to apply critical trends to the business to ensure we stay ahead. Yes or no? Number 2, just write it down, yes or no. Our employees are comfortable asking provocative and even unsettling questions to stretch thinking. Number 3, our people can think on their feet, and when faced with unforeseen challenges, they can nimbly change direction. Number 4, our employees do not easily give up when they encounter adversity or disbelief. They generally see things through. Number 5, our organization is constantly looking ahead for the next 5 to 10 years, and we actively seek solutions on how we can stay ahead of the curve. 5 to 10 years. Number 6, we constantly seek to do things better than what's been done before. We push for continual improvement, even if what we're offering is an established industry leader or is already successful. Number 7, we purposefully hire people with diverse backgrounds, and we strive to create project teams with a variety of disciplines. Right? Diversity. Last one. We often look at what other companies or even industries adjacent or unrelated to ours are doing, right? Casinos, NASA, Oprah Winfrey. We strive to learn from them and apply it to our work. Add up the number of yeses that you have on your list. The number of yeses. How did you do? 1 to 2 is status quo. 3 to 5, you're a risk taker. 6 to 8 is the give me your resume category. Many people do not get this number. What do you think the average number is when I give this quiz around the world? Shout out to me. What do you think? 2, 4, 3? Yeah, it's funny. It's 4. It's 4. Now, interestingly, when I don't ask it from the perspective of your company, when I say, how innovative are you personally? What do you think the score is? Much higher, right? So there's a gap between what we perceive we can do and what we want to do. So here is what was behind each of those statements. If you wrote this down, this will be very interesting for you to tie the skill with what you said yes and no to. Your goal is to increase your score by 2. Don't increase it by 8. You don't need to get 8. You need to improve it by 2. So the first one was about strategic imagination. That's dreaming with purpose. Not just dreaming, dreaming with purpose. Number 2 is provocative inquiry. If you want better answers, ask better questions. Most of us have completely lost the art of inquiry. Number 3 is agility. That's a big word right now. Number 4 is resilience. I would argue that is the number 1 skill with being innovative. Number 5 is future-focused. Number 6 is challenging the status quo, right? Upending your assumptions. Number 7 is active collaboration. And I say active because most of us, when we think of collaboration, we think of meetings, and meetings usually suck, right? Active collaboration. Number 8 is creative problem solving, CPS. So if you look at your list, figure out which 2 no's you want to turn into yeses and what those skills are. Okay? I'm happy to give you this slide later if you guys want to email me. It's a good one for you to ask your teams, by the way, if they took this quiz with you, what they would get. Okay, so let's start doing change. I only have a few more minutes with you guys, but I want to activate your brain again before I give you a couple tools to leave you with. Now, I understand that this is a very smart group. Many of you know math. How many people here are good with numbers? Raise your hands. How many people here can add 2 numbers together? Okay. Who didn't raise their hand is really the concern for me. Okay, so I'm going to ask if it's possible to get this big up on the screen, let's do it. Otherwise, you might have to look at some of the side screens. But here's what I want to do. I'm going to add numbers with you. Okay, I'm going to start with you and then I'll fade away. But we're going to say them together out loud and add them up. So out loud, if I said 2, you'd yell 2. And if I said 2 again, you would add it up and yell. You guys are going to get it. I can tell. Here we go. Let's do it together, out loud. Let's wake up the neocortex. Here we go. Out loud. First number is 1,000. Okay, let's add it up. 1,000, Dan? Good? Good? Okay. Uh-huh. You got it. Three. $5,000. I'll make you feel better. I did this with the CFO and his group at Novartis last week in Basel. He and everyone in his group got it wrong, but there was one guy, and this is why we have a financial crisis, 6,000, right? Like, what? Okay, what happened? Come on, we're friends, shout it out. What happened? Sequence. No, I didn't transpose. There was a sequence, patterns, right? You had pattern recognition. This is a great example of what makes you really good as a leader can make you really bad as an innovator, right? You were taught to find shortcuts, to find patterns. So you were looking for, you can see the pattern, right? 1,000, 1,000, 40, 30, 20, 10. And so we all marched together right off the cliff, right? So what kind of person usually gets this right? I can't hear accountants. Someone say accountants? No, definitely not. Right brain people? No. Kids. Children up to page 10 or 11, usually about 5th to 6th grade, usually before standardized testing happens. Now, I am a proponent of testing, different ways, but I can't recommend that it's the only thing you do. We teach children now, especially in preschool, we teach pattern recognition early, right? We use manipulatives, all kinds of things. But we leave a lot of open to interpretation. There's still a lot of gray area before you have standardized testing. And then we enter the world of right or wrong multiple choice that limits our creative problem-solving abilities. Now, what else happened when we did this together? Groupthink, right? This is particularly important for people that lead introverted groups. So I'm going to start to stereotype. Engineers can be introverted. Scientists can be introverted. I, as a creative person, sometimes can be introverted, right? So why is that important? Often, here's what happened to you. You follow the extrovert. That's particularly true in Western cultures. So some of you, I heard you. You would say, 5,000, right? Because the person who says it loudest is the most confident and definitely the smartest. They must be right. This can be a problem, right? And I understand this, because trust me, when I want to sell an idea, you've never seen someone so extroverted in their life, right? And my idea is better than anyone on my staff because it's my idea, right? This is a problem. So what you need to be able to do is obviously introvert and extrovert, not follow patterns, question your assumptions. So I'm going to help you do that. I'm going to give you 3 quick tools, and here's what I want to do afterwards. I want you to tell me, I'll be here for a little bit, which one you're going to use. I guarantee at least one of these will work for you. They're simple. You can use them with your team. Get your team to do them. It's not all up to you, right? You want to lead behavior change? Give them the tools to do it quickly. Here's the first one. The first one is called assumption reversal. This is a killer tool. It's great because most of us actually can't solve a problem because we can't break it down into parts. We have assumptions about it, and especially if it's your problem, it's very hard for you to question your assumptions because they're your assumptions and you're right. Trust me, that's what your team will tell you. So here's what we do. We talk to leaders, and whenever I'm with leaders, you have to teach the technique first and then apply it to work. The reason why is if you apply it to work first, everyone will tell me why it can't happen. We've tried that before. Don't do that. Okay, so what we'll do for this example is, I'm assuming everyone here has been to a restaurant before? Okay, good. I want you to tell me, just shout out, what are the assumptions that you have about what has to be in a restaurant? Waiter, food, server, silverware, tables, menu, cleanliness. Okay. Trust me, if we do this for a minute, which is what we do, I get between 17 and 22 assumptions. And then I ask the group, so we have to have all these things for it to be a restaurant? Of course, the answer is no. I said, what if we reversed these assumptions? And by reverse, I don't mean opposite. I mean alternative. And let me show you what I mean. So let's say we took these assumptions, a menu, a chef, and a location. The reverse of these could be like this. Rather than a menu, it's no menu. It's a tablet, it's a waiter that reads your mind. A chef, it's a celebrity chef, it's make your own. A location, it's no location, right? It's a secret location, it changes every week. And then they come up with restaurants based on the reversals of their assumptions, and they come up with some pretty cool things. And they learn that the reversals can actually stretch their thinking and actually be more disruptive and get them unstuck, because it makes them break down their problem. But then there's this awkward pause when we get done teaching the technique, and they say, but these restaurants would never happen until you show them that they do. So anyone that's traveled has been to Donna Loire, which is dining in the dark, and there are many variations of this all over the world. Dining in the dark is an experience where you don't have to see your food to actually enjoy it. You can smell it, you can taste it by eating in the dark. And in many of the locations, there are no lights, the waiters are blind, and they escort you to your table in the dark. Or maybe it's this one. This is a restaurant outside of Hamburg. There are no menus. You touch your different options into a tablet, and there are no servers because your food comes down to you in a box on the roller coaster to your seat. Right? I've got 1,000 of these that I can show you. But what's really fun is then I ask people to do this. I want you to think about, this is homework for you. What problem are you currently experiencing, or what assumption do you have that's holding you back? Right, this is a great one for people like me. I'm flying back to New York. I should do this tonight. What is a specific problem that you are just stuck in? Let me give you a little hint. Don't boil the ocean. Make it very simple. My problem is that my staff meetings are horrible, that we have multiple signatures that are needed on our procurement contract. I don't know. Make it something simple. And then I want you to break it down into parts. In fact, what I want you to do is break it down into 20 assumptions. If it feels hard, you're doing it right. 20 assumptions. Assumptions are truths. It is true that my weekly status meeting is weekly. It focuses on status activities. It is done in person. It's always in conference room C. You want truths, not emotions. It's true that people hate it. Well, I don't know what to do with that. Once you get the 20 assumptions, then you reverse them. Bonus points if you reverse them with other people outside of your team. The goal is you have assumptions, you give them away, and let other people reverse them for you. Bonus points if you tell people only to give you reversals that would get them fired. I want you to give me ideas or reversals on my assumptions that would get you fired. And the reason why is they probably won't give you a lot of reversals that will get them fired or you fired, but you're giving them permission to stretch. You are the leader. If you don't give them permission, they won't take the risk. Okay, so think about that. How would you reverse your 20 assumptions? All right, here's the next tool. Let me tell you a story that goes with it. So there was a scientist, and he had 10 monkeys in a cage. And he decided that he would experiment with these monkeys. And what he did is he put a banana on top of the cage. Sure enough, the monkeys right away, they start clamoring for the banana. One of them gets on top of the cage and gets the banana, and he's happy. And the rest of the monkeys, the scientist poured water on top of them and doused them completely, and those monkeys were mad. Next day, puts a banana on top of the cage. Same thing happens. One of the monkeys gets up there, gets a banana. All the rest are doused with water, and they're mad. By the end of the week, none of the monkeys are able to get up for the banana because all the other monkeys pull them down. They've learned the behavior. Don't go for the banana. So he decides, you know what? I'm going to shake things up. And he decides he's going to replace one of the monkeys each week until at the end of 10 weeks, there are 10 new monkeys in that cage. First week, he takes a monkey out, puts a new one in. What's the first thing that monkey does? Goes for the banana. Sure enough, all the monkeys pull him back down. By the end of the week, that monkey knows, don't go for the banana. At the end of 10 weeks, there are 10 new monkeys in that cage. None of them go for the banana. None of them know why. This is your staff at work. None of them know why. So here's a really great tool. It's called Kill a Stupid Rule, and it was started actually by what was Commerce Bank, now TD Bank North. And the idea was we put things in place and then we never question them again. So what do you do with Kill a Stupid Rule? I want you to think about if you could kill any rule at work, what would it be? And if you can't kill that rule, how would you change it? And if you can't kill it, how would you change it? Because certain people are regulated, right? Now think of it in terms of this way. There's red rules and green rules. Red rules are rules you cannot touch. They are industry mandated, they are government regulated. You will go to jail if you actually killed that rule. Do not touch those rules. Everything else is a green rule. The second thing is, if you can't kill it, how would you change it? The goal is, what do you want? Not to have a bitch session. And it is amazing. When you give your teams time, 15 minutes, and you say, what rules would you love to kill or change that are holding us back? At the end of 15 minutes, they want more time. At the end of 30 minutes or more, they share the rules that they've come up with. And what's interesting is what they come up with most of the time are not rules. They're assumptions, they're cultural norms, they're meetings, they're reports, they're things that you can kill on a quick win. And then we have teams, we have them put them up on a 2x2, because everyone loves a 2x2. Sometimes you can't kill all the rules, so which ones are the most important, especially if you're the boss? By the way, not all rules need to be killed. But this is a chance where we have people actually come up on a grid and we say, tell us the top rules you want us to kill so we can look at what we've got. And they put it on this grid, and on the left-hand side here is how easy or hard it would be to implement their kill. And on the bottom, it's how low or high of an impact you would have if you actually killed that rule. And it's funny, when you have teams put up their Post-its of what their rules are, most of them end up in the top right quadrant. People believe that their rules that they want to kill, right, are easy to implement that change, and they would have a high impact on the business. I did this exercise. This is a favorite exercise of Ken Frazier. He's the CEO of Merck. It's also a big one from Dan Hess, who was at Sprint and other places, because this is really an efficiency tool. And what's interesting is I'm standing up there with Ken Frazier at Merck, and he's got his top 300 people around. They've come up with all these rules. Most of them that they want to get rid of are in that top right quadrant, right? Easy to get rid of and would have a high impact on the business. And he looked at his leaders, and he said to them, this is fantastic. There's a lot of quick wins that we could do right here and get rid of right now. And he starts doing that. He gets rid of silly rules. He said, this rule was gone a long time ago. I'm glad you brought this up, blah, blah, blah. And he said, but I have a question. If you guys are my top 300 leaders, and these are all very easy to kill or change, why haven't you done it? And it was a very awkward moment, because it was one of those things where people feel like even the simplest things now, they don't have control to change. So here's what I want you to think about. If you could kill any 2 rules, this is an even better one for your plane ride, that hold you back from better innovating or better growing your business, what would they be? What would you kill, and why? Anything, especially for you that are CEOs. Why? Why not? Okay, and here's my last one for you. The last one I'm going to tell you is you don't have to go, especially in tech, alone when you innovate. In fact, it's often better to partner, and the more inventive, the better. This will teach you stretch on how to do it. And this tool is called Within, Adjacent, Beyond. Within is when you partner with people in your industry or even different business units in your own company. Adjacent are things that are related, but, well, maybe they're vendors, not really partners. And then beyond are just crazy things, right? Casinos, Oprah Winfrey. Totally out of the box. The further you get out in the bullseye, the more disruptive it is, right? So we go from business as usual to incremental to disruptive. And this can work. And I'll give you an example. I was doing some work with a pharmaceutical company. This is Novartis in Basel, so also pharmaceutical Swiss, and these were lawyers, IP lawyers. So this is pretty restricted, IP lawyers and pharmaceuticals. And we did Within, Adjacent, Beyond. And I will tell you that the weirdest thing happened. The most different thing happened. We got done at the end of the day, we did this exercise, and the group in the room that wanted to share their results of Within, Adjacent, Beyond were the oldest guys in the room who hadn't spoken all day, but they were particularly excited about Within, Adjacent, Beyond and the change it could make for the legal department within Novartis. And so I asked these guys, I said, do you want to share what you came up with? And the guy stands up, and this guy's like a breath away from retiring. Breath away, kind of an old curmudgeon guy, really smart, but he really wanted to get out what they came up with. And he said, the first thing that we thought about, we could partner with human resources, because we need younger people in our group, and we need marketing, because legal gets a bad rap. We're the department that says no, everyone thinks we're bad guys, we need a better marketing campaign internally. Okay. Then they had adjacent. He said, we really want to partner with Google or some kind of cloud company, no more wet signatures, we really got to get things digital. Or we want to partner with GE's lawyers. GE knows a lot about how to take something that seems so restrictive and make it simple, right? Contracts from 50 pages down to 5, why not? We should be able to do that. And then the last thing he said is he presented his beyond. And beyond was Facebook and Mick Jagger. And I said, you know, the whole group was just kind of wondering if he was kidding. And he said, let me explain. He said, we want to partner with Facebook because we don't get it and we really need to get to know it. So all of us just want to actually talk to people either younger in the company or our kids to really get on Facebook. We think we could create our own page and really do something fun. And the last thing he said is, I think we should have Mick Jagger be our sponsor. And I said, why? And he said, well, a couple things. He said, you don't know this about me, but I'm a total Rolling Stones groupie. I've been to over 100 shows. And everyone just starts like looking in shock. And he said, the other thing you might know about me is that I am an excellent lawyer. And I think that Mick Jagger will partner with us, and he'll do it for free on barter because he could use a lot of our drugs. Which I thought was very good. Okay, so let me leave you with this. Who would your dream partners for innovation be? Who would they be? And what are the ones that you would love to put in the beyond category that might scare you or your boss? Okay, let me leave you with this. I talked about in the beginning, I have a team, right? And we travel all over trying to get people to better accept change and better embrace it. And I will tell you what we learned is that we can't do it alone, right? Actually, we can't do it, you have to. And the phrase I want to leave you with here is that change is a choice. You do not have to do it. You don't. But what I do want you to think about is, do you want to be the ones that are actually taking orders, or do you want to be the ones that are influencing the change for tomorrow? I think you want to be the ones that influence that change, and I hope that these tools are ones that you'll use to do it. So let me leave you with this. This is my book. This is the toolkit with it in my email. Let me know which ones you're going to use. I'll be signing books after. I would love to hear if you actually used the tools, how they worked, and I hope you create the change that you want. So with that, thank you very much. Have a good conference.
All right, that was terrific. Great job, Lisa. I was remiss when I came out before. I want to thank all of our remote audience. This is the first ChannelCon where we have an equal number of people who registered to experience the event streaming as live in person. So we have about 2,300 people signed up throughout the whole process to take advantage of all the sessions we had, and this session was streamed live, and I think we had a lot of comments, a lot of watchers, so that was really great. We're out into a busy day. Everybody's got a bunch of sessions and things to attend, so let's get right to it, and we'll see everybody back for lunch.